Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was guided by Gran Torino longer. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The smell of the infirmary was always the same, antiseptic, ozone, and the distinct, metallic tang of regret. It was a scent Toshinori Yagi, known to the world as All Might, had grown intimately familiar with over the decades, but it had never turned his stomach quite like it did today. Sunlight filtered through the high windows of Yue High, casting long, sterilized beams across the linoleum floor. Dust motes danced in the light, oblivious to the tension that made the air in the room feel heavy enough to crush a lung. On the bed lay Izuku Midoriya. The boy was unconscious, his breathing rhythmic but shallow. His right arm was a tapestry of purples, blacks, and angry reds, encased in a heavy cast that looked too large for his slender frame. He looked small. Smaller than usual. Stripped of the adrenaline of the sports festival, stripped of the roaring crowds and the desperate cry of smash, he was just a child who had tried to hold a hurricane in a glass bottle. Recovery girl, Chio Shizenji, sat on her stool, her back to Toshinori. She was scrubbing her hands at the sink, the water running loud and hot. She hadn't spoken in 3 minutes. Toshinori shifted in his seat, his skeletal form hunched over his knees. Chio-san, he began, his voice a low rumble in his chest. Quiet. The word was sharp, cutting through the noise of the running water. She turned off the tap with a squeak of chrome and spun around. Her face, usually wrinkled into an expression of tired patience, was set in hard, unforgiving stone. I have done this for a long time, Toshinori, she said. She didn't call him All Might. Not here. Not now. I have patched up heroes who fought villains, heroes who fought disasters, and heroes who fought themselves. I have healed you more times than I care to count. She hopped down from her stool and walked over to the bed, placing a gentle, withered hand on Izuku's forehead. Her expression softened for a fraction of a second before she turned her gaze back to the number one hero. The softness vanished. But I have never seen a teacher encourage a student to cannibalize his own body. Toshinori flinched. I didn't encourage it. I told him. You told him to win, she interrupted. You gave him a power that is essentially a loaded cannon, and you sent him into a war zone without teaching him how to build a carriage for it. Look at his arm, Toshinori. Really look at it. Toshinori forced himself to look. He saw the swelling. He saw the surgery scars from the operation she had to perform because her quirk alone wasn't enough to fix the shattered fragments of bone. If he shatters that arm again, not even breaks it, but shatters it like he did against that Todoroki boy, he will lose the use of it forever. I won't be able to fix it. No one will. Recovery girl walked over to Toshinori, poking him hard in the shin with her cane. I am placing a ban. I will not treat injuries like this again. If he comes to me with self-inflicted destruction because his mentor is too afraid to teach him the basics of survival, I will expel him from this clinic myself to save him from you. Toshinori felt a cold hollow open in his chest. Chio, please. He has the heart. He has the drive. He just needs time. He doesn't have time. She snapped. The world is watching him now. The villains are watching him. And you are fading, Toshinori. We both know it. You don't have years to let him figure it out by trial and error. If you keep teaching him the way you learned, by simply being strong, you are going to bury that boy. She turned back to her desk, dismissing him. Get out of my office. Figure out how to be a teacher, or find someone who can be. The teacher's lounge was empty, save for the hum of the vending machine and the distant ticking of a wall clock. Toshinori sat on the plush sofa, steam rising from a cup of tea he hadn't touched. His skeletal hands trembled slightly. Not from weakness, though that was always there, but from a profound sense of failure. Find someone who can be. He thought back to the beach. To the 10 months of hauling trash. He had taught young Midoriya how to build muscle, how to have heart, how to sacrifice. But Chio was right. He hadn't taught the boy how to use the power. When Toshinori had received One for All, it had been like putting on a tailored suit. It fit. He was a natural-born vessel, a mutant of durability even before the quirk. He could access 100% instantly without breaking. How do you teach someone to breathe? How do you teach a fish to swim? You don't. They just do it. I'm a natural genius, he whispered to the empty room, the words tasting like ash. And that makes me a terrible teacher. He looked at the phone resting on the coffee table. The screen was black, reflecting his gaunt, shadowed face. There was one man. The thought made a phantom pain shoot through his abdomen, unrelated to his injury. A memory of a yellow cape, a white bodysuit, and strikes so fast they felt like lightning. A man who didn't teach with smiles and platitudes, but with terror and physics. Toshinori swallowed hard. He had sworn he would never go back to that training. He had sworn he was done with the bruises, the vomiting, the sheer exhaustion that bordered on torture. But this wasn't about him. This was about the boy who smiled even when his fingers were broken. This was about the successor who was trying so hard to be All Might that he was forgetting to be alive. Stop breaking him, Chio had said. Toshinori picked up the phone. His thumb hovered over the contact list. He scrolled past the police chief, past David Shield, until he reached a number he hadn't dialed in years. It was listed simply as teacher. He pressed call before his courage could fail him. The line rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. What? The voice was gravel and rusted iron. It wasn't a greeting. It was a demand for justification of existence. Gran Torino, Toshinori said, his voice cracking slightly before he cleared his throat. It's Toshinori. I know who it is. I have caller ID, idiot. I haven't been living in a cave. Why are you calling? Finally decided to die? No, Toshinori said. I'm calling because I've failed. Silence on the other end. The teasing edge vanished from the old man's voice. Explain, the successor. The boy I chose. You saw the sports festival? I saw a kid blowing his limbs off like firecrackers, Torino grunted. I saw a sloppy, emotional mess who has too much of your heart, and none of your durability. He's destroying himself to be like me, Toshinori confessed, leaning forward, clutching the phone with both hands. And I don't know how to stop him. I don't know how to explain the middle ground between 0 and 100. I need help, Sorahiko. I need you. You want me to take him for the internship week? No, Toshinori said firmly. Not a week. I want you to take him for the summer. The internship, and then a continuing mentorship. I want you to guide him until he can stand without breaking. That's a big ask, Toshinori. I'm retired. I eat taiyaki and sleep. I'm not in the business of raising babies. He is not a baby, Toshinori said, a spark of defiance entering his tone. He is a hero who needs a direction. I taught him how to be a symbol. I need you to teach him how to be a warrior. Please. For Nana. The name hung in the air, heavy and sacred. A long sigh crackled through the speaker. You play dirty, Toshi? You always have. Will you do it? Send him, Torino growled. But listen to me closely. If I take him, I do it my way. No coddling. No I am here speeches. If he's soft, I'll break him worse than any villain will, and I'll send him back to you in a box marked return to sender. But if he survives, he won't be the same kid who walked in. That's exactly what I'm counting on, Toshinori whispered. Send the offer, Torino said, and the line went dead. 2 days later, Class 1A was buzzing with a nervous, electric energy. The classroom air was thick with chatter as Aizawa stood at the podium, looking as exhausted as ever. Behind him, the digital board displayed the nomination counts. Todoroki Shoto, 4,123. Bakugo Katsuki, 3,556. The numbers were staggering. Even Tokoyami and Ida had impressive counts. Izuku Midoriya sat at his desk, staring at his hands. They were healed, thanks to Recovery Girl's last bit of stamina, but the phantom ache remained. He looked up at the board. Midoriya Izuku 0. He felt a familiar sinking sensation in his gut. It made sense. Who would want a hero who broke his bones after one attack? He was a liability. A glass cannon. He had shown the world his spirit, but he had also shown the world his fragility. Don't worry, Midoriya. Uraraka chirped from the desk next to him, though her eyes held a trace of sympathy. The school will have a list of agencies that accept anyone. You'll find a good one. Yeah, Izuku forced a smile. Yeah, I'm sure. Midoriya. Aizawa's voice cut through the noise. The class went silent. You have one. Izuku blinked. Huh! Aizawa held up a single, thin envelope. It wasn't the standard digital notification. It was physical mail, stamped with a seal Izuku didn't recognize. Came in this morning directly to the principal's office. Special request. He flicked his wrist, and the envelope sailed through the air, landing squarely on Izuku's desk. The class crowded around. Who is it? Kaminari asked, leaning over the back of the chair. Someone big. MT lady? Gunhead? Izuku picked up the envelope. His hands shook. There was no logo. Just a name written in sharp, jagged kanji. Sorahiko Torino. I don't know who this is, Izuku admitted. I do. The booming voice came from the doorway. All Might stood there, gripping the doorframe. He wasn't in his Silver Age costume. He was wearing his oversized yellow suit, his form muscular and towering, but his smile seemed tight. All Might. The class cheered. Young Midoriya, All Might said, stepping into the room. The students parted for him like the Red Sea. He stopped in front of Izuku's desk. Lunch. My office. We need to talk about your summer. The gravity in his mentor's voice silenced the room. This wasn't the usual eat with me invitation. This sounded like a deployment order. Gran Torino, All Might said, pacing the small space of the teacher's lounge later that afternoon. He had deflated into his true form, coughing into a handkerchief. Izuku sat on the sofa, clutching the envelope. Gran Torino? I've memorized the Hero Almanac from the last 30 years, All Might. I've never heard of a hero by that name. You wouldn't have, Tashinori wheezed. He was active for only a short time, and never for the fame. His license was mostly a formality so he could use his quirk freely. But make no mistake, young Midoriya, he is the most capable combatant I have ever known. All Might stopped pacing and turned to Izuku. His sunken blue eyes were serious, stripped of their usual mirth. He was my homeroom teacher at UA for a year. But more importantly, he was the man who trained me after my predecessor passed away. Izuku's eyes widened. He trained you? The symbol of peace? He scraped me off the pavement and turned me into steel, All Might corrected. He shivered, a visible tremor running through his bony shoulders. His training methods are unorthodox. Brutal. To be honest, I'm terrified of him. Izuku swallowed hard. If All Might, the strongest man on earth, was scared, what chance did Izuku have? Why is he nominating me? Izuku asked. Does he know about One for All? He knows everything. He knew Nanashimura, the holder before me. They were best friends. Brothers in arms. All Might knelt so he was eye level with Izuku. Izuku. The use of his first name made Izuku straighten up. Recovery girl is right. My teaching, it has failed you. I have taught you to be a symbol, but I haven't taught you how to survive the job. I asked Gran Torino to take you, not just for the internship week, but for a special extension program. If you accept this, you will be traveling to Kofu City. You will train with him throughout the internship, and you will continue to train with him on weekends and evenings leading up to the summer camp. You asked him? Izuku whispered. He looked down at his scarred hand. Because I keep breaking? Because I don't want you to die, All Might said softly. He reached out, placing a hand on Izuku's shoulder. I can give you the power, my boy. But Gran Torino, he can give you the control. He is the only one who can fix what I've broken. Izuku looked at the envelope again. He felt a surge of fear, but beneath it, a stronger current of determination. He was tired of the hospital beds. He was tired of making his mother cry. He was tired of being the boy who saved the day but couldn't save himself. He gripped the envelope tight, crumbling the edges. I'll do it, Izuku said, looking up. I'll go. All Might nodded, looking both relieved and worried. Good. Here is his address. And Midoriya? Yes? Keep your guard up. He's tricky. Kofu City was different from Mizudafu. It was quieter, older, nestled near the mountains. The address All Might had provided led Izuku away from the bustling city center, down a series of winding streets that became progressively narrower and more dilapidated. Izuku stood before a rusted metal door in an old, two-story apartment complex. The paint was peeling, and the building smelled of mildew and old tobacco. This is where the man who trained All Might lives. He checked the piece of paper again. This was definitely it. He adjusted the straps of his backpack, his hero costume case heavy in his hand. He took a deep breath. Be polite. Be impressive. Show him you're worthy. He knocked. Excuse me. I am Izuku Midoriya from Yaehai. Silence. He knocked again. Hello? Gran Torino-san? Still nothing. Izuku tried the doorknob. It was unlocked. With a hesitant creak, the door swung open. I'm coming in. The apartment was dark, the curtains drawn. Piles of newspapers and junk mail littered the floor. It looked less like a dojo and more like a hoarder's nest. Hello? Izuku stepped inside, his boots crunching on a flyer. Then he saw it. In the middle of the room, lying face down in a pool of red liquid, was a small, elderly man in a white and yellow costume. He wasn't moving. Ah! Izuku screamed, dropping his case. Oh my God! He's dead! Someone killed him! He rushed forward, panic seizing his chest. Sir! Sir, hold on! I'll call an ambulance! He reached for his phone, his fingers trembling. Sausages! Izuku froze. Huh! The old man lifted his head. The blood was smeared across his cheek, smelling distinctly of tomato and high-fructose corn syrup. He licked his lips. I dropped my sausages with ketchup. Izuku stood there, phone halfway to his ear, his brain trying to reboot. You're alive? The old man scrambled up with surprising agility for someone who looked like a dried prune. He was short, shorter than Izuku, with a thick gray beard and a cane that seemed more like a prop than a necessity. Who are you? The old man demanded, squinting. I'm Izuku Midoriya, Izuku stammered. All Might sent me? For the internship? All Might? The old man scratched his head. Who's that? Never heard of him. Izuku blinked. Wait. Tashinori Yagi? Tashinori. The man wandered over to a small kitchenette. Is he the guy who delivers the milk? I like milk. Izuku felt a cold sweat break out. Is this him? Is this really the legendary teacher? He's senile. All Might made a mistake. He sent me to a nursing home case, not a mentor. Sir, Izuku said gently, stepping over a pile of magazines. Maybe I should call someone for you. Do you have a caretaker? The old man ignored him, rummaging through the microwave. Where's my taiyaki? I put it in here. Sir, please listen, Izuku tried to be authoritative. I need to confirm if you are Gran Torino. If not, I need to leave. Taiyaki. The old man turned, pointing an accusatory finger at Izuku. You stole it. The boy in the green suit stole my snack. I didn't steal anything. Thief. Before Izuku could blink, the old man moved. It wasn't a run. It wasn't a jump. It was a blur. 1 second, the old man was by the microwave. The next, a gust of wind slammed into Izuku's chest, and he was upside down, pinned to the ceiling. What? Izuku crashed to the floor, gasping. He hadn't even seen it. He looked up, expecting to see the old man standing over him. Instead, Gran Torino was standing on the wall above the doorframe, defying gravity, holding Izuku's hero case. He was rummaging through it. Nice costume, Torino said. The senile wobble was gone from his voice. It was replaced by a tone sharp enough to cut glass. Flashy. Impractical. Just like Toshi. Izuku scrambled to his feet, assuming a defensive stance. You were faking. Torino hopped down, landing silently. He tossed the case onto the sofa. And you are gullible. You walked into an unknown environment, saw a body, panic flashed your position, and let your guard down because you underestimated your opponent based on appearance. The old man's eyes, hidden behind yellow lenses, bored into Izuku. Tashinori said you were a hero, Torino scoffed. You look like a victim waiting to happen. Izuku gritted his teeth. I'm here to learn how to change that. Are you? Torino walked past him, grabbing a mop from the corner. Then pick this up. Clean the floor. The ketchup is sticky. I'm not here to clean. Izuku protested, the frustration of the last few weeks bubbling up. I'm here to get stronger. I don't have time to be a maid. You don't have time to be dead either, but you're working real hard on that, Torino shot back. Clean the floor. Analyze the room. Or get out. Izuku glared at the old man. He wanted to argue. He wanted to demand the training he was promised. But he remembered All Might's fear. He remembered the warning, keep your guard up. Izuku grabbed the mop. For 3 hours, Izuku cleaned. He scrubbed the ketchup. He organized the newspapers. He threw out trash bags that smelled like they predated the invention of quirks. Torino sat in his chair, eating the taiyaki he had lost, watching Izuku with unblinking intensity. You mutter, Torino said suddenly. Izuku paused, wiping sweat from his brow. Sorry. Bad habit. What were you muttering about? The layout of the room, Izuku admitted. The floorboards are uneven in the east corner. The ceiling has exposed beams that could be used for mobility. The hallway is narrow, favoring linear attacks. Torino raised an eyebrow. Good. You have a brain. Tashinori never had one of those. He just punched through the wall. Torino stood up. He walked to the center of the now clean room. Suit up. Izuku felt a jolt of excitement. Sir, put on your costume. Meet me in the basement gym in 5 minutes. Bring your lunchbox. My lunchbox? You'll see. The basement was surprisingly vast, a stark contrast to the clutter upstairs. It was a concrete box, reinforced with metal plating. Pipes lined the ceiling, and the floor was covered in dense, rubberized mats. Izuku stood in his green jumpsuit, the bunny-eared hood down. He felt the familiar hum of One for All beneath his skin, coiled and waiting. Torino stood across from him. He had shed his cane. He looked small, but his stance was perfect, balanced, relaxed, ready to explode. All right, kid, Torino said. Show me what you've got. Come at me with everything. Everything? Izuku hesitated. Sir, if I use 100%, I'll destroy the building. And my arm. I didn't say use 100%, Torino snapped. I said use everything you have. If the only thing you have is a suicide bomb, then you really are useless. That's dumb. Izuku clenched his fists. I can control it, a little. In my fingers. Boring. Do it. Izuku took a breath. Okay. One for all. 5%. Focus. He channeled the power into his right arm. The red veins glowed. He grit his teeth, preparing for the backlash, and launched himself forward. Smash! He threw a punch aimed at Torino's center mass. It hit air. Torino was gone. A sharp pain exploded in the back of Izuku's knee. His leg buckled. Before he could hit the ground, a foot slammed into his side, launching him across the room. Izuku tumbled, bouncing off the mats. He gasped, scrambling to get up. Too slow. Torino's voice echoed from above. Izuku looked up. Torino was ricocheting off the pipes, a yellow streak of motion. Jet. That was his quirk. Air propulsion from the feet. Where are you looking? Wham! A kick to the back of the head. Izuku face planted into the mat. You telegraph everything. Torino yelled, bouncing off the far wall. You wind up like a baseball pitcher. You scream the name of your attack. Do you think villains are going to wait for you to finish your anime protagonist monologue? Izuku growled, pushing himself up. He's fast. Faster than Ida. I can't track him, Detroit. Izuku spun around, firing a blast of air pressure with a finger flick. The wind blasted a hole in a stack of cardboard boxes, but Torino was already behind him. And you're rigid. Torino kicked Izuku's ankles, sweeping him off his feet again. Izuku hit the ground hard. He lay there for a second, staring at the ceiling lights. His body ached. Not the shattering pain of a broken bone, but the dull, throbbing bruise of humiliation. Torino landed on the chest of the prone Izuku, sitting on him like he was a park bench. Pathetic, the old man spat. Izuku wheezed. I can't keep up. Of course you can't. You're trying to drive a tank like it's a bicycle. Torino leaned down, his face inches from Izuku's. Tell me, boy. What is One for All to you? It's a gift, Izuku stammered. It's the power to save people. It's All Might's legacy. Wrong, Torino said. It's a tool. He poked Izuku in the forehead. You treat it like a special occasion. You treat it like a weapon you only draw when you want to kill something. Tashinori built you like a statue. A monument to justice. Big, flashy, and immobile. Torino hopped off him. I need to turn you into a bullet. Izuku sat up, rubbing his ribs. A bullet? Tashinori is the symbol of peace, Torino began, pacing. He stands in the middle of the chaos, and holds up the sky. He takes the hits because he is invincible. You are squishy. If you take a hit you crumble? So, the solution is simple. Torino vanished again, reappearing instantly on the other side of the room. Don't get hit. That's easier said than done, Izuku muttered. It's impossible the way you fight now, Torino lectured. You turn the power on, you swing, you turn it off. On. Off. On. Off. The time lag is where you die. The rigidity is where you break. Torino walked over to the corner and picked up a plate. On it was a cold, stiff taiyaki. This is you, Torino said. He held it up. Stiff. Frozen. If I hit this, it snaps. He tossed it to Izuku. Izuku caught the cold pastry. Now, Torino pointed to the microwave in the corner of the gym. Put it in. Heat it up. Izuku looked at the microwave, then at the taiyaki. Sir, I don't understand. Just do it. Izuku walked to the microwave, put the fish-shaped cake inside, and turned the dial. He watched the plate spin. In the microwave, Torino's voice came from right behind his ear, making him jump. The heat is everywhere. It's not just in the tail. It's not just in the head. It's constant. Evenly distributed. The whole thing gets warm. Izuku watched the pastry spin. Constant. Everywhere. You focus the power in your arm, Torino whispered. Or your finger. You bottle it up until the pressure is so high it explodes. But what if? Torino tapped Izuku's spine. What if the heat was everywhere? All the time? Izuku's eyes widened. The image of the egg in the microwave, the one he had imagined months ago, flashed in his mind. Don't let the egg explode. But if the egg is the whole body, full coverage? Izuku whispered. Don't strain, Torino commanded. Don't try to summon 100%. Just let the pilot light burn. 5%. Everywhere. Arms. Legs. Back. Neck. Keep it there. Izuku closed his eyes. He took a deep breath. Usually, he grabbed the power and shoved it into a limb. It was violent. It was forceful. No. Like breathing. Like the microwave. He felt the hum of the power in his chest. Instead of pushing it down his arm, he let it flood out. He let it trickle down his spine, into his hips, down to his toes. He let it rise up his neck. Green lightning sparked around his body. Not in a burst, but in a steady, crackling rhythm. His hair floated slightly. He felt lighter. The pain in his body seemed to dull, replaced by a buzzing energy. I'm doing it, Izuku gasped. It felt like holding his breath, but with his whole body. Good, Torino said. Now hold that. Okay, and try to hit me. Izuku's eyes snapped open. What? Torino grinned. It was a terrifying, shark-like grin. You heard me. Keep that form. Don't let it drop. And try to land a single touch on me before dinner. But, go! Torino launched himself off the wall, coming in low. Izuku reacted. But this time, he didn't have to wind up. He didn't have to activate his legs. The power was already there. He jumped, and he slammed headfirst into the ceiling pipes. Gah! Izuku fell, crashing onto the mat again. Too much juice. Torino cackled, bouncing around him in circles. You don't know your own throttle. Control, boy. Control, Izuku groaned, clutching his head. The green lightning was still crackling around him, though it flickered. Again. Torino yelled. Izuku stood up. He gritted his teeth. He lowered his center of gravity. 5%. Just 5%. Keep it flowing. He looked at the old man bouncing around the room. He didn't see a senile retiree anymore. He saw the path forward. He saw the way to stop breaking. I won't give up, Izuku said, the lightning stabilizing. I'm not asking you to give up, Torino said, blurring into motion. I'm asking you to keep up. As the jet hero came rocketing toward him, Izuku didn't brace for impact. He moved. He slid to the right, faster than he ever had before, the rubber mat squeaking beneath his boots. He missed the dodge by an inch, and Torino's kick sent him skidding, but he stayed on his feet. He was standing. Torino landed, skidding to a halt. He looked at Izuku, a small glint of approval buried deep in his stoic expression. Not bad, Torino grunted. For a stiff taiyaki. Izuku wiped a streak of dirt from his cheek, his eyes burning with green energy. I'm not a taiyaki, he said, breathless but smiling. I'm Deku. We'll see, Deku, Torino said, crouching low. Round 2. Don't blink. As the sun began to set over Kofu, casting long shadows into the basement gym, the sounds of impact and electricity echoed into the night. Far away, in the teacher's lounge of UA, Toshinori Yagi looked at his phone. He hadn't received a call to come pick up a corpse yet. He took a sip of his tea, and for the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to hope. Survive, young Midoriya. Survive and learn. The summer of the jet stream had begun. The first thing Izuku Midoriya noticed when he woke up was that his body didn't feel like his own. It felt like a bag of wet cement that had been dropped from a third-story window. He was lying on the stiff, lumpy mattress of the guest futon in Gran Torino's living room. The morning light was filtering through the cracks in the heavy curtains, illuminating dust motes that swirled in the stale air. Izuku tried to sit up, and a symphony of pops and cracks echoed from his spine. His calves burned. His abs felt like they had been shredded with a cheese grater. You're awake, a voice grunted from the kitchen. You're late. Izuku blinked, checking the clock on the wall. It's 5:30 a.m. Exactly, Gran Torino said, shuffling into the room with a plate of sausages. Villains don't sleep in, kid. And neither does muscle memory. Get up. Izuku groaned, forcing his limbs to cooperate. Every movement sent a signal of protest to his brain. He had spent the previous evening getting battered around the basement gym, trying to maintain the flow of one for all throughout his body. He had managed it for maybe 10 seconds at a time before his concentration slipped, or he slammed into a wall. Breakfast, Torino said, pointing to the table. Eat fast. We start in 10 minutes. Izuku stumbled to the table, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. What are we doing today? More combat training? Torino sat opposite him, pouring tea with a steady hand. Combat? You're not ready for combat. You can barely walk without tripping over your own power. Today we live. Izuku paused, a sausage halfway to his mouth. We live? Eat. 10 minutes later, Izuku stood in the center of the living room, wearing his PE uniform. He felt a little more awake, the food having settled the gnawing emptiness in his stomach. All right, Torino said, standing by the microwave, his favorite appliance, it seemed. Activate it. Izuku took a breath. He closed his eyes, visualizing the egg in the microwave. Not exploding. Heating evenly. He felt the hum of one for all in his chest. He pulled it, not into a knot, but into a web. He let it spread. Shoulders. Hips. Knees. Ankles. BZZT. Green sparks crackled around him. The red veins glowed softly on his skin. His hair lifted slightly, defying gravity. 5%, Izuku whispered, his teeth gritted slightly. It felt like holding a heavy weight above his head. Doable, but draining. Good, Torino said. He walked over to the corner and picked up a basket of laundry. Now fold these. Izuku's eyes popped open. What? You heard me. Fold my laundry. And vacuum the rug. And then go buy milk, sir, Izuku said, the green lightning flickering as his concentration wavered. I don't understand. How is this training? I need to learn how to fight. Torino moved. It was that terrifying, blink and you miss its speed. He was suddenly inches from Izuku's face, his cane tapping Izuku's shin hard enough to bruise. You think fighting is a special event? Torino barked. You think you clock in, punch a bad guy, and clock out? One for all isn't a suit you put on, boy. It's your body now. If you have to stop and think, okay, time to activate my power every time a villain jumps you, you're dead. You're too slow. He shoved the laundry basket into Izuku's glowing arms. Maintain the state. Continuous output. 5%. Don't let it drop. Not while you fold. Not while you walk. Not while you pee. If the lightning stops, I kick you. Understand? Izuku looked down at the basket, then at his glowing hands. I understand. Good. Don't burn my underwear. The next 6 hours were a fresh kind of hell. Maintaining full cowling, as Izuku had started calling it in his head, during a fight was one thing. The adrenaline fueled the focus. But maintaining it while doing mundane chores was excruciating. It required a split focus. Part of his brain had to constantly regulate the energy output, keeping it at that safe 5% threshold to avoid blowing out a window or crushing a plate, while the other part of his brain had to focus on the task at hand. He folded a shirt. Focus. Don't squeeze too hard. The fabric tore. Wham! Torino's cane smacked the back of his head. Too much grip strength. You're folding cotton, not bending steel. He vacuumed the rug. Focus. Regulate the legs. He pushed the vacuum forward. The sudden burst of speed from his legs sent the vacuum cleaner flying across the room, where it smashed into the wall. Thwack. A high-speed kick to the kidney. You owe me a new vacuum. Control your friction. By noon, Izuku was sweating profusely. His head pounded with a migraine that felt like a drill boring into his temples. The mental fatigue was far worse than the physical exhaustion. It was like trying to solve a complex calculus equation while balancing on a tightrope. Take a break, Torino said, looking up from his newspaper. You look like you're about to have a stroke. Izuku let the power fade. The green lightning vanished. He collapsed onto the sofa, his chest heaving. This is harder than it looks. It's supposed to be, Torino said calmly. Toshinori didn't have to do this. His body was a natural fortress. He could hold 100% while drinking tea and laughing. You're a leaky vessel. You have to actively hold the water in. Torino hopped off his chair. I'm going to the store to get that milk you failed to buy because you were too busy fighting the vacuum cleaner. Stay here. Rest your brain. The old man zoomed out the door, leaving a gust of wind in his wake. Izuku lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling. All Might was a natural fortress. He sat up, reaching for his backpack. He needed to write this down. He pulled out his notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future, number 13, and a pen. He flipped to a fresh page. Concept, full cowling, uniform distribution of power. Prevents backlash on individual limbs. Current limit 5%. Issues, mental strain. Microcontrol of motor functions is difficult because the power amplifies every twitch. Solution, acclimatization. I need to make this state my new normal. He started sketching a diagram of the energy flow, muttering under his breath. He was so absorbed in his analysis that he didn't hear the front door open 20 minutes later. He didn't notice Gran Torino standing behind the sofa until a shadow fell over the page. Detailed, Torino said. Izuku yelped, clutching the notebook to his chest. Gee, Gran Torino. You're back early. I move fast. Torino held out a hand. Let me see that. It's just my notes. It's nothing special. Give it here. Izuku hesitantly handed over the battered notebook. Torino took it, his eyes scanning the burnt, water-damaged cover. He flipped through the pages. He saw sketches of Kamiri Woods. Auntie Lady. A detailed breakdown of Bakugo Katsuki's explosion arcs. Pages and pages on All Might, his punches, his jumps, his poses, his smile. Torino stopped on a page dedicated to the sports festival. He saw Izuku's analysis of his own fight with Todoroki. Strategy: use finger flicks to negate ice. Sacrifice fingers to create openings. Last resort: sacrifice arm for direct hit. Torino closed the book with a snap that echoed in the quiet room. He tossed it back onto Izuku's lap. Garbage. Izuku flinched. I know it's messy, but I'm not talking about the handwriting. I'm talking about the mindset. Torino walked around the sofa and stood in front of Izuku, leaning on his cane. His expression was severe. You analyze everyone, don't you? You know exactly how that explosion boy shifts his weight before he blasts. You know the exact angle of All Might's Texas smash. Information is power, Izuku defended weakly. Information is useless if you don't know how to apply it to yourself, Torino countered. Look at those notes, kid. Really look at them. What do you see? Izuku looked down at the book. Analysis of heroes and villains. No, Torino shook his head. You see idols. And you see obstacles. But where are you? He poked Izuku in the chest. You have 50 pages on All Might. You have 0 pages on Izuku Midoriya. You write down how to copy them. You write down how to sacrifice your body to mimic their moves, but you haven't written a single word on what your body is actually good at. Izuku opened his mouth to argue, but the words died in his throat. He thought about his strategies. Smash like All Might. Move like Kaken. Endure like All Might. You're trying to drive a sports car using the manual for a semi-truck, Torino said, his voice dropping to a serious rumble. Toshinori is 6'7" and weighs 500 pounds of muscle. You are 5'5" and weigh, what? $140 soaking wet? 150, Izuku muttered. Small, Torino stated. You have a lower center of gravity. You have shorter limbs. You have less mass. So why in the hell are you trying to throw haymakers that rely on mass and reach? Izuku stared at him. Because, that's how One for All is used. That's how the symbol of peace fights. That's how Toshinori fights, Torino corrected. Nana didn't fight like that. She floated. She used redirection. I don't fight like that. I use speed and momentum. Torino leaned in close, his yellow lenses reflecting Izuku's wide eyes. Stop worshipping the quirk, and start driving it. Until you figure out who you are in a fight, you're just a cheap copy in a green jumpsuit. Torino straightened up. New rule. Izuku braced himself. For the next 3 days you are banned from using your fists. Izuku blinked. What? No punches. No finger flicks. No Texas smash. If I see you close your hand into a fist during training, I will knock you unconscious and leave you in a dumpster. But how am I supposed to fight? Izuku panicked. My whole style is, your whole style is breaking your arms. Torino shouted. You have 4 limbs, boy. Use the other 2. They're bigger, they're stronger, and they have more reach. Figure it out. Torino turned and marched toward the kitchen. Now, put that notebook away and come help me cook. And keep full calling on. If you crush the tofu, you're eating it off the floor. Day 2, the constraint. The ban on fists was paralyzing. Izuku realized, with horrifying clarity, just how reliant he was on mimicking All Might. Every time he moved to engage in their sparring sessions in the basement, his instinct was to draw back his right arm. Wrong. Smack. Torino's foot connected with Izuku's ribs, sending him sliding across the mats. You tried to punch again. Torino yelled from the ceiling pipes. It's habit! Izuku cried, scrambling up. He was glowing with full cowling, but his movements were jerky and uncertain. Without his fists, he felt naked. He felt defenseless. Break the habit, Torino dove. Izuku panicked. He tried to block, raising his forearms. Torino bounced off his guard and swept his legs. Izuku hit the ground. You're thinking block, Torino lectured, landing lightly on a stack of mats. You're small. Blocking is stupid. If a guy like Muscular hits you and you block, you fly. You need to deflect. You need to dodge, and you need to counter. I can't counter if I can't punch. Izuku yelled, frustration boiling over. You have legs, you idiot. Kick him. I don't know how to kick. Izuku shouted back. I've never trained in kickboxing. All Might never taught me. Forget All Might. Torino roared, creating a shockwave that rattled the pipes. Look at your body. Look at your analysis. What happens when you run? Izuku paused. I generate momentum. And where does that momentum go? Into the ground. So put it into the target instead. Torino didn't wait for the lesson to sink in. He attacked again. This time, he didn't hold back his speed. He was a yellow pinball of pain. Izuku was forced onto the defensive. He ran. He used full cowling to jump, bouncing off the walls to escape the old man's assault. Think. He's right. I'm smaller. I'm faster than I used to be. My legs are the strongest part of my body because I spent 10 months hauling trash on the beach, mostly walking and squatting. Izuku landed on the wall, sticking to it for a split second thanks to the friction of his soles. All Might stands his ground. I can't stand my ground. So I have to never be on the ground. Torino came at him from the left. Izuku pushed off the wall. Instead of trying to punch, he instinctively tried to create distance. He lashed out with his leg, not as a calculated attack, but as a panic reaction to keep the old man away. His heel clipped Torino's shoulder. It wasn't a solid hit. Torino rolled with it easily, but the force surprised Izuku. He pushed himself backward, landing in a crouch. Better, Torino grinned. Sloppy. Ugly. But better. Day 3, the city run. We're going out, Torino announced on the evening of the third day. Izuku looked up from his dinner, cold soba. He was exhausted. His legs felt like jelly. He had spent the last 24 hours doing squats and lunges while maintaining full cowling. Patrol? Izuku asked hopefully. Race, Torino corrected. 10 minutes later, they were in the back alleys of Kofu. The city was a maze of narrow streets, fire escapes, and telephone wires. The objective is simple, Torino said, adjusting his cape. I'm going to buy a limited edition taiyaki from a vendor near the station. It's 3 kilometers away. If you can arrive within 10 seconds of me, I'll buy you one. And if I don't, then you run back home. While I eat yours. Ready. Go! Torino vanished. A blast of air kicked up dust from the alley floor. Izuku grit his teeth. One for all, full cowling. The green lightning snapped into existence. He launched himself forward. Running in the gym was one thing. Running in the city was different. The terrain was uneven. There were trash cans, stray cats, puddles, and uneven pavement. Izuku bounded off a dumpster, grabbing a fire escape ladder to swing himself up to the rooftops. 5%. Keep it steady. He landed on the roof and sprinted. The wind whipped against his face. He felt fast. Faster than he had ever been. He saw a yellow streak darting across the rooftops ahead. Torino was ping-ponging between buildings, using his jet propulsion to cut corners. He's cutting across the gap. If I follow his path, I'll fall. Izuku reached the edge of the roof. The next building was 20 feet away and slightly lower. I can make it. He pushed off. The power in his legs surged. He soared through the air. For a moment, he felt like he was flying. He landed on the next roof, rolling to disperse the impact. He didn't stop. He kept moving. Don't think about punching. Think about flow. He vaulted over an AC unit. He slid under a water tower. His movements were becoming less rigid. He wasn't stopping to calculate every jump. He was letting his body do the math. My legs, they're like springs. Compress. Release. He caught sight of Torino again. The old man was waiting at a red light on a street corner below, tapping his foot impatiently, even though he could easily jump over the traffic. He was mocking Izuku. Izuku grinned. He jumped from the roof to a lamppost, swung around it, and landed on the sidewalk. I'm here! Izuku panted, sliding to a halt. Torino checked his watch. 12 seconds late. Izuku slumped. Damn it, but Torino said, pointing to the vendor. You didn't break anything. And you didn't scare the civilians. You moved quietly. Izuku looked at his hands. He hadn't realized it, but he hadn't made a sound. No screaming smash. No shattering concrete. Stealth and mobility, Torino noted. 2 things All Might sucks at. He announces his arrival with a sonic boom. You could be a ghost. Torino bought 2 taiyaki. He handed one to Izuku. Eat up. We're taking the long way back. Day 5, the breakthrough. The ban on fists was lifted, but Izuku found he didn't want to use them as much. They were back in the basement. The air was thick with humidity, and the smell of ozone. You're getting comfortable, Torino said, circling Izuku. You're holding 5% for an hour at a time now. Your movement is smoother. But you still lack a finisher. You run well, but you don't bite. I'm trying, Izuku said, bouncing on the balls of his feet. His stance had changed. He wasn't standing square on like All Might anymore. He was bladed, his hands up but loose, his knees bent deep. "Show me," Torino commanded. "Come at me with the intent to put me down." Izuku took a deep breath. He analyzed Torino's position. The old man was near the wall, baiting him. If I rush in, he jets over me. If I stay back, he jets into me. I need to close the gap, but I need to keep my options open. Izuku dashed. Torino fired a jet burst, shooting toward the ceiling. Expected. Izuku didn't stop. He jumped, kicking off the wall to intercept Torino in midair. Torino's eyes widened slightly. Air combat? Torino spun, using his cape to obscure his vision, and kicked downward. Izuku twisted his body. He couldn't dodge in midair. He had to block. He crossed his arms, taking the heavy hit, and plummeted to the ground. He hit the mat, rolling backward. Torino was already diving for the follow-up. I'm trapped. He has the high ground. He has the speed. If I punch, I miss. If I kick... Izuku's eyes locked onto Torino's trajectory. He was coming in fast, a straight line. A bullet travels in a straight line. Izuku planted his hands on the ground. He channeled the power not into a jump, but into a spin. He used his arms as a pivot point, swinging his legs around like a helicopter blade. Smash! He cried out, purely out of habit. But it wasn't a smash. It was a sweep. His iron-soled boot caught Torino's ankle just as the old man tried to land. The impact was jarring. Torino's momentum was turned against him. He spun out of control, crashing into a stack of gym equipment with a loud clamor of metal. Silence filled the room. Izuku froze, still in his breakdance-like pose on the floor. Gran Torino! Are you okay? The pile of equipment shifted. Torino emerged, rubbing his shoulder. He looked at Izuku. Then he looked at the dent in the metal locker he had hit. You used your hands to ground yourself, Torino muttered. And your legs to strike. A breakdance style? I just reacted, Izuku breathed, standing up. It felt natural. My arms are shorter, so using them for balance let me extend my reach with my legs. Torino walked over, limping slightly. He stopped in front of Izuku. It was ugly, Torino said. Izuku looked down, but Torino continued, a grin spreading across his face. It worked. You used the environment. You used your body type. And you didn't break a single bone. Torino poked Izuku's leg. Shoot style, Torino said. Huh, that's what we'll call it. You shoot around like a bullet, and you strike like a whip. Shoot style. Izuku tested the name. Shoot style. He smiled. It wasn't All Might style. It was his. Don't get cocky, Torino snapped, swatting him with his cane. You got lucky. If I was really trying to kill you, you'd be dead. But, it's a start. Day 7, the final test. The week was coming to an end. The Hosa City Patrol was scheduled to begin tomorrow. Izuku sat in the living room, his new notebook, Hero Analysis, Izuku Midoriya, open on his lap. It was filled with diagrams of kicks, mobility charts, and notes on how to maintain full cowling under stress. Torino came in, carrying 2 cups of tea. He placed one in front of Izuku. You've changed, Torino said quietly. Izuku looked up. Sir, when you walked in here, you were a nervous wreck trying to wear a costume that was 3 sizes too big. You were looking for permission to exist. Torino took a sip of his tea. You still mutter too much. And you're still too soft. But you stopped looking for All Might in the mirror. Izuku looked at his reflection in the dark window. He saw the green lightning arcing faintly around his collar. He saw the determination in his eyes. He saved my life, Izuku said softly. He gave me a dream. I'll always look up to him. Looking up is fine, Torino said. Just don't stare at the sun too long, or you'll go blind to the cliff in front of you. Torino reached into his pocket and pulled out a small yellow object. It was a scarf. A slightly tattered, heavy-duty fabric scarf. He tossed it to Izuku. What's this? It's old material. Gran Torino costume fabric. Tougher than Kevlar. Lighter than silk. Torino grunted. Your costume looks like a bunny rabbit. It needs something to break up the silhouette. Izuku held the yellow fabric. It was the same color as Torino's cape. The same color as Nana Shimura's gloves, based on the photos All Might had shown him. Sir, I can't take this. Take it. You're going to Hosa tomorrow. That city is a hornet's nest right now. The hero killer is out there. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. The hero killer, Stain, Izuku said, clutching the scarf. Ida's brother. Ingenium was a good hero, Torino said somberly. Fast. Honest. If Stain got him, then Stain is dangerous. He targets those he thinks are fake. But he also targets those who get in his way. Torino leaned forward. Listen to me, Deku. We've trained your body. We've trained your mind. But real combat, real killing intent, it's different. If you see Stain, you run. You call the pros. You don't engage. Do you understand? I understand, Izuku said. Do you? Torino challenged. Because that boy, the engine kid, he's got murder in his eyes. I saw it at the sports festival. If he finds Stain, he's going to throw his life away. Izuku stiffened. He had suspected Ida was hurting, but he hadn't thought. If Ida is in danger, Izuku said, his grip tightening on the yellow scarf, I have to help him. And if you die helping him, you fail everyone, Torino said. You fail All Might. You fail me. And you fail the people you're supposed to save in the future. Torino stood up. But, if you do have to fight. The old man grinned, a feral, dangerous expression. Make sure you kick him in the teeth. Departure. The bullet train to Hosu was quiet. Izuku sat by the window, watching the landscape blur by. He was wearing his hero costume, the case resting at his feet. He felt the hum of one for all under his skin. It was quiet now. Controlled. A pilot light waiting to be turned up. He tied the yellow scarf around his neck. It felt grounding. A piece of history wrapped around his shoulders. He pulled out his phone. He had a message from Ida. Ida, I've arrived in Hosu. Normal patrols. Don't worry about me, Midoriya. Izuku frowned. The text was too formal. Too brief. He looked at his reflection in the train window. He didn't see the helpless boy from the entrance exam. He didn't see the self-destructive reckless fighter from the sports festival. He saw the Jetstream successor. He closed his eyes and began the breathing exercise Torino had taught him. Inhale. 5% spread. Exhale. Maintain. Next stop, Hosa City, the announcer's voice crackled. Izuku opened his eyes. The green sparks danced in his irises. I'm ready. The bullet train sliced through the dark countryside, a silver needle threading the night. Inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old upholstery. Izuku Midoriya sat across from Gran Torino. The old hero was asleep, or pretending to be, his head bobbing slightly with the rhythm of the tracks. He looked harmless, a shrinking, elderly man in a cape that had seen better decades. But Izuku knew better now. Beneath that wrinkled exterior was a coiled spring of terrifying kinetic energy. Izuku looked down at his own hands. They were gloved in his new support gear, bracers that offered a bit more stability to his forearms. But his eyes were drawn to his legs. Under his green trousers, he could feel the phantom sensation of the lightning. The full cowling, 5%, he thought. Constant. Like breathing. Don't let the microwave stop. He shifted his gaze to the window. The lights of Hosa City were approaching, a grid of amber and white against the black horizon. It looked peaceful from here. Just a city. Just people going home, eating dinner, watching TV. But somewhere in that grid was Tenya Ida. And somewhere in that grid was the hero killer, Stain. Izuku touched the yellow scarf around his neck. It was coarse, heavy-duty fabric, smelling faintly of Gran Torino's apartment, dust and taiyaki. It felt like a mantle of responsibility. Stop vibrating, Torino muttered without opening his eyes. Izuku jumped. I'm not vibrating, sir. You're projecting anxiety. It's loud. Torino opened one eye, the yellow lens of his mask gleaming. We're going on a standard patrol. We walk the streets. We look for trouble. If we find the hero killer, we call the pros. You are not hunting him. Is that clear? Yes, sir, Izuku lied. Or at least, he tried to make it the truth. He wanted to follow orders. But the text message from Ida, I've arrived in Hosu, had been too brief, too cold. It wasn't the message of a student on an internship. It was the message of a man saying goodbye. The train began to decelerate. Hosa City, the automated voice announced. Hosa City. Suddenly, the car lurched. It wasn't the brakes. It was a lateral impact. A boom echoed through the cabin, metal screaming as the side of the train car buckled inward. What was that? A passenger screamed. Izuku was on his feet instantly. Full cowling, the green lightning snapped into existence around his body, illuminating the dim cabin. Before he could move, the wall of the train tore open like wet paper. A creature, muscular, brain exposed, eyes vacant, crashed into the aisle. Anomu. Sit down, kid! Gran Torino was a blur. He didn't stand up. He launched himself from his seated position. A jet of air blasted from his boots, propelling him into the creature's chest. The impact was thunderous. The Nomu was carried out the other side of the train car, smashing through the opposite window. Stay here! Torino yelled over the rushing wind. This is big. I'm going after it. He was gone, chasing the monster into the city. Izuku stood in the ruined train car. Smoke was filling the air. Passengers were screaming, scrambling for the exits. Anomu? Here? Why? Izuku ran to the hole in the train wall. He looked out at the city. Fires were starting to bloom in the distance. Screams echoed from the streets below. This isn't a random attack. It's coordinated. The League of Villains is here. He gripped the window frame, the metal groaning under his gloved fingers. Ida. If the League was here, chaos was here. And if chaos was here, the hero killer would use it as cover. Stain didn't strike in the light. He struck in the shadows of larger events. Izuku pulled out his phone. He opened the class group chat. No new messages from Ida. Think, Izuku muttered, the green sparks dancing around his cheeks. Stain targets heroes. Where are the heroes? The fires are in the commercial district. The pros will flock there. That leaves the alleys empty. The blind spots. Normal hero killers flee the scene, Izuku whispered, recalling his analysis notes. But Stain is a zealot. He wants to purge. He won't flee until he's finished his job. He'll be where the pros aren't. Izuku looked at the chaos in the distance, then at the darker, quieter sector of the city near the train station. The alleys. The dead ends. He didn't think. He moved. He leaped from the train, green lightning trailing behind him like a comet's tail. He didn't land with a heavy thud like All Might. He landed on a lamppost, knees bent, absorbing the shock, and immediately sprang off toward a building facade. Don't run on the ground. The ground is cluttered. Use the verticality. He was a green bullet, ricocheting off the city's architecture, hunting for his friend. The alley of judgment. The alleyway was a throat of darkness, choking on the smell of blood. Tenya Ida lay on the wet pavement. His armor was shattered. His helmet lay a few feet away, cracked down the middle. He couldn't move. His body felt heavy, disconnected from his brain, paralyzed by the jagged blade that had tasted his blood. Above him stood the hero killer. Stain looked like a nightmare stitched together from rags and blades. His red scarf, blood red, tattered, floated in the windless alley like a living thing. His eyes were manic, devoid of pupils, focused entirely on the pro-hero native, who was slumped against the wall, bleeding out. You are a fake, Stain rasped, his voice sounding like sandpaper on bone. He pointed his katana at Ida. You came here not to save, but to avenge. You used your quirk for yourself. You are the cancer that infects this society. Shut up! Ida screamed, tears streaming down his face. You killed my brother! Ingenium was a hero. He was noble. He was weak, Stain spat. And so are you. Goodbye, false hero. Be an offering to a just world. Stain raised his sword. The blade caught the moonlight. Ida squeezed his eyes shut. I'm sorry, brother. I'm sorry, mother. I failed. Clang. The sound of metal on metal rang out, sharp and vibrating. Ida didn't feel the blade. He opened his eyes. A figure was crouching on the wall above him. Not standing, crouching horizontally, defying gravity, boots pressed against the brickwork. Green lightning crackled around the figure's limbs, casting harsh, strobe-like shadows in the alley. Midoriya? Ida gasped. Stain stepped back, his sword vibrating from the impact of a high-speed kick that had knocked it off course. He looked up, his eyes narrowing. Another child? Stain growled. Izuku Midoriya pushed off the wall, backflipping to land defensively in front of Ida and Native. He didn't stand tall. He sank into a low crouch, his right leg extended back, his hands up but loose. He wore a yellow scarf that fluttered in the static of his own power. Ida, Izuku said, his voice steady, though his heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. Can you move? No. Ida choked out. It's his quirk, paralyze. Midoriya, run! You can't beat him. I can't move either, Native groaned from the shadows. He cut us. Izuku's eyes locked onto Stain. Blood ingestion. That has to be it. He licked the blade. I'm not leaving, Izuku said. He pressed a button on his phone behind his back, sending his location to the group chat. It was the only backup he could call. Stain chuckled. It was a wet, disturbing sound. Good eyes. You didn't yell. You didn't make a speech. You aimed for the weapon, not the man. Stain lowered his stance, the katana held loose in one hand, a jagged dagger in the other. You are different from this trash, Stain gestured to Ida with his chin. But you are still in my way. Move, and you live. You're going to kill them, Izuku said. I am going to cure society, Stain corrected. Then I'm not moving. Izuku took a breath. Full cowling. 5%. Don't pulse it. Keep it flowing. Warm the egg. Stain lunged. In the past, Izuku would have flinched. He would have seen the blade coming and tried to block it, or tried to throw a desperate punch. But Izuku had spent the last week being hunted by a man who moved faster than thought. Stain was fast, terrifyingly so, but Gran Torino was a jet engine. Stain slashed horizontally, aiming for Izuku's neck. Izuku dropped. He didn't just duck, he collapsed his structure, letting gravity pull him down faster than the blade, his hands touching the wet pavement. Torino Rule 4, if you're small, be smaller. From his crouch, Izuku exploded upward, not with a punch, but with his legs. He drove his shoulder into Stain's solar plexus, using the villain's own momentum against him. Gah! Stain grunted, stumbling back. He slashed again, a downward arc. Izuku sidestepped, the green sparks trailing behind him. He didn't retreat backward. He moved laterally, jumping onto the alley wall. He stuck for a microsecond, the rubber soles of his iron boots gripping the brick, and pushed off, launching himself over Stain's head. He landed behind the villain. Smash! Izuku threw a kick at the back of Stain's knee. It connected. Stain's leg buckled. But the hero killer was a veteran of 1,000 street fights. As he fell, he spun, the dagger in his offhand slicing through the air. Izuku saw the glint. He threw himself backward, using a blast of air pressure from a finger flick to create distance. Rip! The dagger caught his shoulder pad. It sliced through the Kevlar, and grazed the skin. A thin line of red appeared on Izuku's shoulder. Izuku landed 10 feet away, panting. He's fast. His reaction time, it's incredible. Stain stood up, rotating his shoulder. He licked the blood from the tip of his dagger. Not bad, Stain murmured, his tongue sliding over his lips. You bounce around like a rabbit. But a rabbit is still prey. Izuku felt his body seize. The paralysis. No. Not now. His limbs locked up. The green lightning flickered and died. He collapsed to the ground, his face pressing into the gritty concrete. Midoriya! Ida screamed. Stain walked slowly toward Izuku. You have good instincts, boy. You prioritize the rescue. You use the terrain. Unlike him. He gestured to Ida. You are a warrior. So I will let you live, but you must stay down while I finish my work. Stain stepped over Izuku, raising his katana above Ida's prone form. No! Izuku screamed, straining against his frozen muscles. Stop it! Stop it! Listen to him, Ida, Stain whispered. This boy is a hero. You are a counterfeit. The blade descended. Whoosh! A blast of fire, hot and roaring, tore through the alley. Stain leaped back, shielding his eyes as a wall of flame separated him from Ida. One after another, a calm, monotonous voice said. There are a lot of people getting in my way today. Izuku, unable to turn his head, saw a boot step into his peripheral vision. A boot half covered in ice. Todoroki-kun? Izuku wheezed. Shoto Todoroki stood at the alley entrance, his left side wreathed in flame, his phone in his hand. Midoriya. You need to give more details in your group texts. You made me run halfway across the city. Don't let him lick your blood, Izuku warned, his voice tight. That's how he stops you. Blood ingestion? Todoroki analyzed, keeping his eyes on Stain. So I just have to keep him at a distance. Stain smiled beneath his mask. Distance won't save you from conviction. Stain threw a knife. It wasn't aimed at Todoroki. It was aimed at Native. Coward! Todoroki yelled, unleashing a wave of ice to intercept the knife. The distraction worked. Stain closed the gap, diving under the ice. His blade flashed toward Todoroki's chest. Todoroki panicked, trying to ignite his left side, but Stain was inside his guard. Slice. A cut on Todoroki's cheek. Stain licked the blade mid-swing. Todoroki stumbled, but he didn't freeze. It didn't work? Todoroki gasped, blasting fire to push Stain back. Blood types, Izuku realized aloud, his mind racing even as his body refused to move. Ida is type A. I'm type O, Native is type B. The paralysis duration, it varies by blood type. O is the shortest, which means? Todoroki asked, erecting an ice wall. Which means I'm almost back. Izuku gritted his teeth, forcing his fingers to twitch. Come on. Move. Move. Stain shattered the ice wall. He was relentless. He wasn't using a quirk to fight. He was using pure, honed killing skill. He dodged the fire, he deflected the ice shards, closing in on Todoroki with lethal intent. You rely too much on your quirk. Stain roared, slashing Todoroki's arm. You are powerful, but you are sloppy. Todoroki fell to one knee. Stain raised his sword for the killing blow. Recipro. Burst. A blur of silver slammed into Stain's side. Ida. The engines on his calves were smoking. He had forced himself up, forced the paralysis to break through sheer will, and the time limit expiring. He kicked Stain away, sending the villain skidding across the pavement. Ida! Izuku cried out. The feeling was returning to his legs. Ida stood shaking, blood dripping from his arm. I will not let you kill my friends. I will not let you shed any more blood. So the fake finds a spine, Stain spat, recovering instantly. But a spine is not enough, Stain charged. This time, he was going for the kill. He wasn't playing with them anymore. His aura flared, a red, suffocating pressure that made the air feel thick as tar. Todoroki! Cover me! Ida yelled. Right. Todoroki unleashed a massive wave of flames. Stain cut through the fire. He was a demon, unstoppable. But as he emerged from the flames, he didn't find Ida. He found Izuku. The paralysis had broken. Izuku didn't just stand up. He launched. Full cowling. Green lightning illuminated the alley, brighter than before. Izuku bounced off the left wall, then the right, gaining speed with every ricochet. He was a pinball in the narrow throat of the alley. Stain expects linear attacks. He expects punches. He expects heroes to fight like men, fight like a jet. Izuku reached the third-story fire escape. He pushed off, diving downward. Smash! He didn't aim for Stain. He aimed for the ground in front of Stain. His heels struck the concrete. The impact, amplified by 5% and the velocity of the fall, shattered the pavement. Debris flew up like shrapnel. Stain flinched, shielding his eyes from the concrete dust. A smoke screen? Stain thought. Now Ida! Izuku screamed. Ida rushed through the dust cloud, his engines roaring. He delivered a high-speed kick to Stain's stomach. Stain coughed blood, flying backward. But he twisted in the air, landing on his feet. He raised his sword. You are persistent! Stain yelled. We aren't done! Izuku was already moving. He ran up the wall behind Stain. Todoroki! Ice ramp! Todoroki didn't question it. He slammed his hand on the ground, creating a massive slide of ice that curved upward. Ida took the ramp. Recipro extend. Izuku jumped from the wall. They converged on Stain from two angles. Stain looked up. He saw the engine kick coming from the front. He raised his sword to block. I can take the kick. I'll cut his leg off. But he forgot the rabbit. Izuku didn't kick. He used his new support item, the iron saws. He grabbed a metal pipe protruding from the building, swung around it like a gymnast, and generated massive centrifugal force. He released. He wasn't a projectile. He was a hammer, shoot style, iron drop. Izuku's heel slammed into the side of Stain's head just as Ida's kick connected with Stain's ribs. Crack. The sound was sickening. Stain's eyes rolled back. The sword clattered to the ground. The hero killer crumpled like a marionette with its strings cut. He hit the wet pavement, and didn't move. Silence returned to the alley. The only sounds were the crackling of Todoroki's fire, and the heavy, ragged breathing of 3 students. Izuku landed on his feet, wobbling slightly. The green lightning faded. He checked his body. No broken arms. No shattered legs. Just bruises, the cut on his shoulder, and exhaustion. He looked at his hands. They were trembling, but they worked. I did it. We did it. And I didn't break. Is he dead? Todoroki asked, walking over cautiously. Ida checked Stain's pulse. He looked up, his glasses cracked, tears mixing with the blood on his face. No. He's unconscious. We won. Ida looked at Izuku. Midoriya, your movement. It was Gran Torino. Izuku managed a tired smile, adjusting his yellow scarf. He taught me how to not be a sitting duck. The aftermath. They dragged Stain, bound with rope found in a dumpster and encased in Todoroki's eyes, out to the main street. The pros were arriving. Endeavor. Gran Torino. The police. Gran Torino landed first, his cape swirling. He took one look at Izuku, standing, not on a stretcher, and let out a sharp breath. You idiot, Torino grunted, kicking Izuku lightly in the shin. I told you to stay on the train. I know, Izuku said, bowing his head. I'm sorry. But you're alive, Torino finished. He looked at the unconscious Stain. And you caught a monster. Before they could celebrate, a screech filled the air. The winged Nomu, the one Torino had kicked earlier, was swooping down. It was bleeding, erratic, desperate. It dove straight for the group, claws extended toward Izuku. Watch out! Torino yelled, preparing to jump. But suddenly, the air froze. A wave of pure, concentrated bloodlust washed over the street. It was so intense that the pro-heroes froze. Even Endeavor paused. Stain had woken up. With a burst of strength that shouldn't have been possible, Stain shattered the ice binding him. He grabbed a hidden knife. But he didn't attack the students. He licked the blood of the Nomu from a stain on the cheek of the creature, which had been injured by Torino earlier. The Nomu froze mid-air, paralyzed. It crashed to the ground. Stain walked over to the beast. He stabbed it through the brain, killing it instantly. Then, he turned to the heroes. His mask had fallen off. His nose was broken, courtesy of Izuku's heel. His eyes were burning coals, the fakes. Stain rasped, swaying on his feet. The society overgrown with weeds. He looked at Endeavor. You are false. He looked at Ida. You have much to learn. Then, he looked at Izuku. Izuku froze. The killer intent was suffocating. It felt like dying. Stain took a step toward Izuku. But you... Stain whispered, pointing a bloody finger at the boy in the green suit and yellow scarf. You are worthy. The villain's eyes widened, a manic grin stretching his face. You fight to save. You bleed for others. And you move. Stain chuckled darkly. You move like a hunter. Keep that scarf, boy. Earn it. Stain's eyes rolled back. He collapsed, unconscious, standing upright for a moment before toppling over. The silence that followed was heavier than the fight. Endeavor lowered his flames. Gran Torino let out a long sigh. Izuku stood there, the words echoing in his mind. Worthy. The ambulance sirens wailed in the distance, breaking the spell. The hospital room. Izuku, Todoroki, and Ida sat in a private room at the Hosu General Hospital. Ida and Native were being treated for serious lacerations. Todoroki had a bandage on his arm. Izuku had a bandage on his shoulder, and some ice packs on his knees, but that was it. No casts. No surgery. The door opened. A man with the head of a dog walked in. Kenji Tsurigami, the chief of police. Gran Torino followed him. The chief gave his speech, the one about vigilantism, about breaking the law, about how, strictly speaking, they should be punished. Ida clenched his fists, shame burning his face. It was my fault. I dragged them into this. Punish me? Wait, Tsurigami held up a hand. That is the official stance. However, he offered them the alternative. The credit goes to Endeavor. The kids get off with a warning. They accepted, of course. As the chief left, Gran Torino stayed behind. He walked over to Izuku's chair. You held your own, Torino said. You analyzed the blood-type weakness. You used the environment. And you didn't try to punch through a sword. I still got cut, Izuku said, touching his shoulder. And I needed Todoroki and Ida to win. You're 15, kid. Stain has killed 20 pros. Surviving is winning. Torino poked Izuku's chest. But what impressed me was your stamina. You kept full calling up the whole time, didn't you? I think so, Izuku nodded. I didn't really think about it. It just stayed on. Good, Torino grinned. That means the microwave is working. He turned to leave. Rest up tonight, kid. We're going back to Kofu tomorrow. You didn't break any bones, which means you don't get a vacation. Training resumes at 0600. Izuku groaned, but he was smiling. Yes, sir. The train ride back to Mizudafu was disconcertingly quiet. Normally, after a major event involving villains, Izuku Midoriya was unconscious. He was usually waking up in a hospital bed, surrounded by beeping machines, smelling of antiseptic, with his mother crying over his bandaged form. That was the routine. That was the price of one for all. But today, he was awake. He sat in the window seat of the bullet train, watching the green blur of the Japanese countryside whip past. His right arm was sore, yes. His legs ached with a deep, lactic burn that felt like lead in his veins. He had a bandage on his shoulder where Stain's dagger had grazed him, and a few colorful bruises blooming on his ribs. But his bones were whole. He flexed his right hand. The fingers opened and closed smoothly. No casts. No surgery. No recovery. Girl sighing in disappointment. Stop staring at your hand, kid. It's not going to fall off. Gran Torino sat across from him, reading a horse racing tabloid. The old hero looked as small and unassuming as ever, munching on a bag of pickled plums. I'm just... Izuku lowered his hand. I'm not used to this. Walking away. That's because you've been fighting like a suicidal crash test dummy for a year, Torino grunted, not looking up from the paper. Walking away is the point, Deku. If you can't walk away, you can't fight tomorrow. And there is always a tomorrow. Izuku nodded, touching the yellow scarf that was still wrapped loosely around his neck. He had washed it in the hotel sink the night before, scrubbing out the dust of the Hosu alleyway. It felt heavier now. It felt earned. About the police report. Izuku started. It's handled. Torino cut him off. Endeavor gets the credit. You, the engine boy, and the walking thermostat get a scolding and a slap on the wrist. Tsurigami is a stickler for rules, but he's not blind. He knows Stain would have turned that alley into a butcher shop if you three hadn't stepped in. Torino folded his paper and looked at Izuku. The yellow lenses of his mask were gone, revealing sharp, intelligent eyes that had seen too many wars. But don't think you're off the hook. You got lucky. Stain was testing you. If he had wanted you dead from the first second, you'd be in a morgue, not a train. I know, Izuku said softly. He remembered the paralyzing aura. The bloodlust that felt like physical weight. He called me a true hero. A warrior. Don't let it go to your head, Torino snapped. Being praised by a psychopath isn't a badge of honor. It just means you fit his twisted criteria. What matters is that you protected your friends. You acted. Torino pointed a callous finger at him, but you hesitated. When the paralysis hit, you panicked. And when you moved to strike, you telegraphed your landing. A villain with a ranged quirk would have sniped you out of the air. Izuku pulled out his notebook, Hero Analysis number 14, and clicked his pen. Right. Aerial vulnerability. I need to work on mid-air direction changes without solid surfaces. We'll work on it, Torino said. Izuku paused. We? You think we're done? Torino raised an eyebrow. The internship ends today, technically. But I made a promise to Tashinori. And more importantly, I'm not leaving a job half-finished. You're still a sloppy mess, kid. A slightly faster, slightly harder to hit mess, but a mess nonetheless. Torino leaned back, closing his eyes. I've spoken to the rat. You're mine for the summer. UA High the return. The atmosphere in Class 1 a.m. Monday morning was electric. The news had broken over the weekend. The hero killer Stain arrested in Hosu. Endeavor was the face on the news, but the rumor mill was churning. Everyone knew Ida, Todoroki, and Midoriya had been in Hosu. When the door opened, conversation died. Tenya Ida walked in first. His left arm was in a sling, and he looked somber, older. He walked with a stiffness that spoke of physical and emotional wounds. Behind him came Shoto Todoroki, looking as impassive as ever, though there was a small bandage on his cheek. And then Izuku. Deku! Uraraka was the first to move, launching herself out of her seat. Oh my gosh! We saw the news. Are you okay? Ida-kun, your arm. The class swarmed them. Man, that was scary stuff. Kaminari exclaimed. Stain? The guy who took out Ingenium? And you guys were there? It was intense, Ida said, his voice steady but low. I caused a great deal of trouble. Endeavor saved us, but... He glanced at Izuku. Izuku stood by his desk. He wasn't hunched over. He wasn't stammering or waving his hands in a panic to deflect attention. He was standing with his feet shoulder-width apart, his weight balanced on the balls of his feet, a habit from the last week of constant readiness. We're just glad everyone is alive, Ajui said, her finger on her chin. But Midoriya-chan, you're not in a cast. Karo. The observation hung in the air. Usually, Midoriya returned from these things looking like a mummy. Yeah, Kirishima noted, walking over and slapping Izuku on the back. Dude, you look solid. Did you not fight? I fought, Izuku said. His voice was calm. But I learned how to dodge. Bakugo Katsuki sat at his desk, feet up, staring out the window. But at those words, his red eyes slid sideways, locking onto Izuku. He didn't say anything. He just watched. All right, settle down, Aizawa's voice droned from the doorway. He shuffled in, looking even more tired than usual, which was an impressive feat. Homeroom is starting. Take your seats. Aizawa scanned the room. His gaze lingered on the Hosu trio. Ida, Midoriya, Todoroki. Come see me after class. We have paperwork to discuss regarding your involvement. Aizawa's eyes narrowed slightly at Izuku. And Midoriya. Yes, sensei? You're walking quietly today. Good. Izuku blinked. He hadn't realized it, but he had moved to his seat without a sound. The iron soles of his new boots were heavy, but he was unconsciously cushioning every step with a microburst of full cowling. Gran Torino hates noise, Izuku muttered to himself. The principal's office. The tea in Principal Nise's office was Earl Grey, and it was excellent. All Might, in his skeletal form, sat on one sofa. Gran Torino sat on the other. Nise sat at his desk, his paws steepled. Aizawa stood by the window, arms crossed. The report from the chief of police is quite detailed, Nise chirped. 3 students engaged the hero killer, while Endeavor took the credit. The autopsy of the fight, so to speak, shows that Stain suffered a concussion from a blunt force impact to the cranium, likely a kick, and multiple frostbite burns. Nise looked at All Might. Your successor cracked the skull of a man who has murdered 20 pro-heroes. And he did it without shattering his own leg. All Might let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for days. He listened. For the first time, he really listened. He didn't listen to you, Torino corrected bluntly. He listened to physics. All Might flinched, but he nodded. You are right, Sorahiko. My methods were based on my own physiology. I treated him like a smaller version of myself. You treated him like a different entity entirely. He's a rabbit, Torino said, taking a sip of tea. A rabbit with a cannon strapped to its back. If the rabbit stands still to fire the cannon, the recoil kills it. If the rabbit moves and fires, the momentum cancels the recoil. It's simple mechanics. Simple or not, Aizawa interjected, turning from the window. It worked. Midoriya is usually a liability in the field because he becomes a casualty immediately after his first attack. In Hosu, he acted as a vanguard, a diversion, and a striker. He maintained combat effectiveness for the duration of the encounter. Aizawa looked at Torino. Whatever you did to him in 1 week, keep doing it. That's the plan, Torino said. But I can't keep dragging him to Kofu every day. The commute is a waste of training time. Torino looked at Nizu. I want access to your facilities. Gym Gamma. The industrial zone. It has the verticality he needs. 3 days a week, after school. From 16 to 1900 hours. A distinct mentorship program, Nizu mused. Usually, internships are limited to the specific week. However, given the rising threat of the League of Villains, and the fact that Mr. Midoriya is clearly a target, Nizu smiled. It was the smile of a creature who enjoyed setting predators loose in a maze. Approved. Under the condition that All Might attends as well. Me? All Might pointed to himself. Yes, Torino grinned darkly. You need to learn how to teach, Toshi. You can watch. And maybe if you're good, I'll let you hold the stopwatch. All Might paled. Alright. Also, Torino added, I need the support department to make adjustments to his gear. Those red boots of his are iconic, sure, but they have no grip. He needs traction if he's going to be bouncing off walls. I will forward the request to Power Loader, Nizu said. This Jetstream project of yours. I look forward to seeing the results. Hero Basic Training, Rescue Race, Tuesday afternoon. Field Gamma. The location was a sprawling labyrinth of pipes, steel girders, and concrete platforms. It was designed to simulate an industrial complex. Today's training is simple, All Might announced. He was in his muscle form, though he stood near the monitoring screens rather than in the center of the field. A rescue race. 4 students at a time. Locate the target dummy in the center of the complex and extract it to the perimeter. First one back wins. Race? Ciro grinned, flexing his tape elbows. Mobility is my game. I got this. Don't count me out. Ashido cheered, stretching her legs. I can slide. Group 1, All Might called out. Ciro. Ashido. Ojiro. Midoriya. Izuku stepped up to the starting line. He wore his costume, now sporting the yellow scarf Gran Torino had given him. He adjusted his gloves. Hey Midoriya, Ojiro said, tail wagging. No offense, but isn't this bad for you? If you use your quirk to jump, won't you blow up the platforms? I'll be careful, Izuku said. He wasn't looking at Ojiro. He was scanning the environment. Pipes at 30 degrees. Girders spaced 4 meters apart. Good friction on the concrete. Ready. All Might yelled. Start. Ciro launched himself instantly, tape shooting out to grab a high beam. He swung forward. See ya. Ashido skated along the ground on a stream of acid, moving fast. Ojiro vaulted using his tail. Izuku didn't move for a split second. He breathed. Full cowling. Green lightning wrapped around him. Don't jump high. Jump long. Izuku vanished. He didn't run on the ground. He leaped onto a horizontal pipe, balanced on it for a microsecond, and then rebounded off a vertical pillar. Ping. 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 The sound of his iron saws hitting metal was rhythmic. He wasn't just jumping, he was vectoring. Ciro was swinging high, confident in his lead. He looked down. Hey, I guess Midoriya is stuck on the grow. A green blur shot past him. Above him. What the heck? Ciro yelped. Izuku had kicked off a crane arm, twisting his body in midair to land on a narrow beam. He didn't stop to regain balance. He carried the momentum into a roll and launched again. Gran Torino's voice echoed in his head. The floor is lava. The air is your highway. Izuku reached the center. The dummy was there, strapped to a chair. Ashido was just arriving, sliding around the corner. Gotcha! But Izuku was already there. He didn't stop. He grabbed the dummy strap with one hand without slowing down. Sorry, Ashido-san. He spun, using the weight of the dummy as a counterbalance, and flung himself back toward the perimeter. Carrying the dummy slowed him down. He couldn't wall bounce as effectively with a dead weight. Adapt. If I can't bounce, I slide. He landed on a downward sloping pipe. He activated 5% in his legs, not to kick, but to vibrate. To reduce friction? No, to stabilize. He surfed down the pipe, sparks flying from his iron soles. He hit the ground running. Ciro was catching up, swinging desperately. Not gonna lose! Ciro yelled. Izuku saw the finish line. He pushed. 6%. Just for a second, he crossed the line. Winner, Midoriya! All Might's voice boomed over the speakers. Izuku skidded to a halt, the dummy safe in his arm. He wasn't panting. He wasn't clutching a broken finger. He was just standing there. The class, watching from the observation deck, went silent. Since when can he do that? Kaminari asked, eyes wide. He moved like a pinball. He didn't destroy anything, Yaoyorozu noted, her eyes narrowing in analysis. His precision has increased exponentially. He's controlling the output to minimize collateral damage while maximizing velocity. He moves like Bakugo, Kirishima whispered. Bakugo, leaning against the back wall, scoffed. His hands were in his pockets, but his knuckles were white. The locker room. The boys were changing after class. The mood was lighter, filled with the usual banter, but there was an undercurrent of curiosity directed at Izuku. Midoriya, that was manly, Kirishima said, towel around his neck. Seriously, what did you do at your internship? Did Gran Torino replace your legs with springs? Something like that, Izuku smiled, pulling on his shirt. He taught me how to use my body properly. I was always fighting against my own power. Now I'm trying to flow with it. Flow, huh? The voice was low and dangerous. The locker room went quiet. Bakugo stood by his locker, shirt off, revealing the toned muscle of a natural prodigy. He wasn't looking at Izuku, but the air around him was heating up. Kaken? Izuku turned. Bakugo slammed his locker shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot. He walked over to Izuku, stopping inches from his face. You stole my moves, Bakugo hissed. The mid-air turns. The blast to change direction. That's my style. That's my way of flying. In the past, Izuku would have flinched. He would have stammered, no, Kaken, He would have backed up until he hit the wall.